Okay, so I want to start today by painting a picture. It's a Sunday morning, you walk into a church, and the place is it's absolutely packed. Standing room only. The band is incredible, world class. The music is swelling. You see people weeping in the front row. The preaching is dynamic. The whole place feels electric. If you were a consultant looking at the metrics, attendance, giving, enthusiasm, you'd say, they've peaked. This is it. This is success.
That's the image we all chase, right? I mean, it's the very definition of a healthy, thriving community.
Exactly. But here's the hook for today's deep dive. What if I told you that right in the middle of all that noise, all that vitality, there might be a massive glaring silence? That is the paradox at the heart of the book we're unpacking today. It's called Beyond Borders, the strategic roadmap to raise missionaries for the unreached by Chris R. Villasis.
And this is such a fascinating read because, Villasis isn't writing this from some ivory tower. He's looking at his home, the Philippines, which is, it's arguably one of the most vibrant Christian nations on earth.
For sure.
But he's pointing out this tension. You have overflowing spiritual life inside the walls, but this huge gap between that energy and any real global impact outside the walls.
Right. It's like, and yeah, I love a good car analogy. It's like having a Ferrari in the garage. You're revving the engine so loud the windows shake, the neighbors can hear it, everyone knows there's power there, but you never actually back it out of the driveway.
That is the perfect analogy. And Villasis is basically asking, so how do we get the car out of the garage?
Yeah.
He's trying to write a manual for how to turn the Philippines from being just a mission field,
The place people go to.
right, into a sending nation, a global hub for, exporting missionaries.
Okay, but before we get into the how, let's just establish the who. Villasis isn't just some armchair quarterback, is he?
Oh, not at all. Far from it. He has over 25 years in the game. He's been a missionary pastor, a strategist, a mobilizer. He's seen the big conferences where everyone gets fired up, and he's also seen the burnout that follows. He is writing from the trenches.
So he sees the potential, but he's frustrated.
Deeply frustrated by the lack of movement. And he frames all this against a number that is, wow, it's pretty heavy. The 3 billion?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the anchor stat. 3 billion unreached people on the planet. And that means people with zero access to the gospel, no church, no Bible, not even a Christian neighbor. His whole point is that our current model, no matter how loud and happy it looks, it just isn't making a dent in that number.
So let's get into his diagnosis then. If the church is so alive and the need is so massive, what is the blockage? Because usually, when we talk about this, we blame the usual suspects, lack of money, fear of persecution.
Or closed border. Can't get a visa.
Right, but that's not what he says. He points to something much quieter and honestly a lot stickier.
Yeah.
He says the number one barrier is just comfort.
Comfort.
Yeah. It feels, almost disappointing. So domestic. Like the enemy isn't some dragon, it's a really nice sofa.
It does feel a bit anticlimactic, doesn't it? But his argument is actually really nuanced here. He's quick to clarify that comfort in itself, it's not evil. It's a gift. Rest, safety, air conditioning. These are good things. He's not calling for everyone to be miserable.
Okay, so he's not saying we all need to go sleep on rocks to be holy.
Precisely. But he says comfort becomes dangerous when it shifts from being a gift to being the organizing principle of faith.
Organizing principle of faith. That's a great phrase. Let's break that down. What does that actually look like?
It means the subconscious goal of everything becomes safety and satisfaction. So you can have a church that is booming locally, great kids programs, safe community, everyone feels blessed, but is functionally absent from God's global mission because moving outward just disrupts that settled life.
It's that difference between a cruise ship and a battleship.
Yes, exactly. Both float, both have crews. But a cruise ship is designed entirely for the comfort of its passengers. Keep them happy, keep them fed. A battleship is designed for a mission outside of itself. Villasis is basically saying that so many churches function like cruise ships, but they keep singing battleship songs.
Oh, that is a sharp critique. We're all singing oceans, lead me where my trust is without borders. From a padded chair with a latte in our hand.
Exactly. And he grounds this in theology, which is so important. He traces the story of the Bible from Abraham all the way to Acts, and his point is that God is always outward moving. God calls Abraham to go. The early church in Acts was literally pushed outward by persecution because they got too comfortable in Jerusalem.
So the idea is that settling isn't just a neutral state. It's actually working against the very nature of God.
Yes, and this is key. He brings in this concept of drift. The natural gravity of our human nature is toward comfort, toward self-preservation. That's the current. But the current of God's Spirit is always moving toward the unreached. So if you just float, if you weren't intentionally swimming against that current, you don't stay still. You actually drift away from the mission.
That's a terrifying thought. If you aren't actively pushing forward, you're passively retreating. Okay, so the goal is to reverse this drift, to become a sending nation. But what does that actually mean? Is he just saying we need to guilt trip more people into buying plane tickets?
No, and thank goodness for that, because we've all seen that guilt trip model. It lasts for maybe 2 weeks. No, he's talking about a collective identity shift. He defines a sending nation as a place where sending becomes instinctive, systemic, and enduring.
Instinctive. So it's not, oh, look, there goes Dave. He's the weird, adventurous one. It's more like, this is just who we are. This is what we do. We send people.
Correct. It becomes the water they swim in. And this is where the book gets really specific to the Philippines, though the principles, I think, apply everywhere. He lists these national assets. He says that Filipinos are almost uniquely engineered for global missions right now.
I saw that list. And it's interesting because some of those things, like a history of suffering, are usually seen as negatives. But he flips them into superpowers.
He does. Take deep relational warmth and hospitality. In many Western cultures, loneliness is an epidemic. But the Filipino cultural ability to connect what they call pakikisama, that is a huge missional tool. It opens doors that a seminary degree just can't.
And English fluency, that's the obvious one. It's the global language.
It's a huge bridge. But the one that really got me was resilience. He points out that Filipinos are they're used to things not working perfectly. Typhoons, gridlock traffic, bureaucracy, they have a high AQ and adversity quotient.
That's such a good point. If you drop a missionary who needs everything to run on their Google Calendar into a rural village somewhere, they might crack in a month. But if you're already used to improvising.
Exactly. You're pre-adapted to the field. And then there's the biggest asset of all, the global Filipino diaspora.
The OFWs, the overseas Filipino workers.
Right. Millions of them. Nurses, engineers, teachers. They're already in the Middle East, in parts of Asia that are technically closed to traditional missionaries. Villasis's point is, they are already there.
That's the Trojan horse strategy, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. It's about changing the narrative, shifting from being a labor exporter to a faith exporter. They aren't just there to send money home. They're positioned by God in places a pastor could never go.
Okay, so the potential's there, the people are there, the skills are there, but we're stuck in comfort. So how do we break out? Because usually the answer is, a big conference, get a hype man.
Play a sad video with some slow music.
Right. And Villasis is so critical of that sugar rush approach. He contrasts sporadic enthusiasm with what he calls sustained formation.
I love that phrase he uses, passion without pathways fades. It's so true. I mean, how many of us came back from a youth retreat on fire for God, ready to change the world, and then 2 weeks later?
You're back to playing video games.
Yeah. It's the camp high. He says we focus way too much on motivation, getting people excited, and not nearly enough on formation, getting people ready. He lays out this whole roadmap: awareness, then vision, then formation, action, sustainability, and finally, legacy.
Let's double-click on that formation piece.
Yeah.
How is that different from just, going to church and being a good person?
Well, this is where he calls for a major shift in how we do discipleship. For a long time, he argues, discipleship has been about personal holiness. Am I avoiding sin? Am I nice? Do I read my Bible?
All good things. We want people to be nice.
Essential things. But he says discipleship has to also include alignment with God's purposes. So it's not just, am I behaving? It's, am I obeying the call to go? You can be a very well-behaved Christian who is completely disobedient to the Great Commission.
Oof. That stings a little. It's active versus passive righteousness.
It should sting. And he says we need to start early, teaching kids not just Bible stories, but showing them a map of the world. Helping teenagers define a calling as something more than just a career path.
Which brings us to what I thought was the spiciest take in the whole book.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really difficult, because he goes right for the heart of the culture. The family.
Yes. This is the third rail of the whole discussion.
Because in the Philippines, and let's be honest, in a lot of cultures, family is God. Not officially, but functionally, it's everything.
It's paramount. A parent's success is often defined by keeping their kids close, safe, and stable. The good child is the one who lives nearby and takes care of you in your old age. That is the cultural script.
Right. But Villasis is saying that exactly.
He challenges parents to release their children to the mission. He argues that obedience to God has to come before family proximity.
That is a tough pill to swallow. I can just hear a parent saying, I raised this kid, I paid for college, I sacrificed everything, and now you want me to just send them off to some dangerous country where they won't make any money.
It feels like a betrayal. But he reframes the whole thing by redefining success. He says the church and the family have just been using the wrong metrics. We measure success by accumulation money, safety, bigger houses.
The bigger is better model.
Exactly. But Villasis says the new metric has to be faithfulness and obedience.
And this is where he uses that Noah analogy, right?
Yeah.
I thought this is just brilliant.
It's one of the best insights in the whole book. He says Noah was successful long before the flood arrived. Just think about that. Noah spent decades building a giant boat in a desert. No rain, no ocean. By any worldly metric, popularity, revenue, sanity, he was a total failure.
His neighbors must have thought he was absolutely losing his mind.
Of course. But by the metric of obedience, he was successful the moment he cut that first piece of wood.
That just flips the entire script. It means a tiny church that sends out 3 missionaries could be more successful than a megachurch that keeps 5,000 people comfortable in their seats.
Precisely. And that requires a huge institutional change. Churches have to stop asking, what did we build? And start asking, who did we prepare?
Who did we prepare? That's the question. Okay, so we've got the vision. We've got the cultural challenge. Let's talk brass tacks. Part 3 of the book is the roadmap. How do we actually do this?
Right, because passion without pathways fades. So he gets very practical. A huge emphasis is on mentorship pipelines.
How is that different from what happens now?
Well, now it's often very ad hoc. Someone feels a call. Maybe they go to seminary. Maybe they just go. Villasis argues for a deliberate apprenticeship model. You have veterans pouring into the new generation before they even launch.
So you're testing the calling before you buy the plane ticket.
You're testing the character. You're building resilience. This helps prevent that high burnout rate where people come home after 2 years because the reality didn't match the brochure.
That makes a ton of sense. And then he pivots to something really modern, digital platforms. But he doesn't just mean like live streaming the service on Facebook, does he?
No, and this is a really key distinction. He's talking about digital as a means of access. There are countries you cannot physically enter as a missionary. The borders are shut tight. But digital borders, they're a lot more porous.
You can't stop a YouTube video at customs.
Exactly. He talks about digital discipleship that can get into closed nations, using technology not just to market your church, but for actual formation and evangelism in these hard-to-reach places. Treating the internet as a mission field, not just a billboard.
That's smart. Using today's tools for ancient problems.
And the final piece of his structural puzzle is alumni networks. And this is all about sustainability.
Why is that so critical?
Because mission work is incredibly lonely. And coming home re-entry can be just as traumatic. You've been living in a totally different world and you come back and people are upset about the price of coffee. It's jarring.
Reverse culture shock.
Totally. Villasis says if you want this movement to last for generations, you need the people who have been there and come back to support the new ones going out. It creates this cycle of wisdom.
So you're not reinventing the wheel every single time. You have a tribe behind you who knows exactly what you're going through.
Correct. It turns a solo mission into a community movement. It ensures that the sending is enduring, not just a flash in the pan.
I really appreciate how comprehensive this is. He starts with the spiritual problem. Comfort goes through the tough cultural work with the family and then lands on the actual practical mechanics.
He connects the dots in a way you rarely see. Most books on this are either purely theological, here's why you should go, or purely practical, here's how to get a visa. Villasis bridges that gap.
So as we wrap this up, let's zoom out. We started with this quiet obstacle of comfort. The idea that our blessed life might actually be blinding us to our purpose.
And we move to the vision of a sending nation, going from being passive recipients to active givers.
And the ultimate invitation of the book, and I think this is for you listening too, is to move from passive admiration of missionaries to intentional participation.
That's the core shift. It's so easy to put missionaries on a pedestal, right? We treat them like the special forces of Christianity. But Villasis says no, the command was for the whole church. It's much harder, but so much more rewarding to ask, okay, how am I participating in this?
And he has a warning about timing, doesn't he? This isn't something to just put on the back burner.
He does. He says the danger of delay isn't neutrality. We think if I don't do it now, I'll just stay where I am. But he says no. Remember the drift. If you are not intentionally moving toward the mission, The current of comfort is actively pulling you away from it.
That's the thought that's going to keep me up tonight. You're never standing still. You're either swimming or you're drifting.
Exactly.
So here's the question we want to leave you with today. We've talked a lot about borders, geographical, cultural, but Villasis challenges us to look closer to home. If success is really defined by obedience rather than by safety, what border might you need to cross today?
And it might not be an ocean.
Right, it might be walking across the street to a neighbor you've ignored. It might be crossing the border of your own budget to support someone else. It might be crossing the border of your expectations for your kids.
What is that line that comfort has drawn in the sand of your life? And are you willing to step over it?
That's the question that changes everything. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.